You go.
Mary's back again. Tell a friend. Post-pod. Let's do this. How'd that go?
I thought great. Really good. Way better than I could have done.
Oh, man.
I did have the song overplaying in my head as I recognized it's a distinctive asset. The song, soundtrack. Yeah. Well done, V.
Thanks, man. Well, what can I say? First of all, we got Mary back. And we had an agenda to talk about a whole lot of stuff, and we didn't even get through everything that we wanted, unfortunately.
Yeah. You know what though? Like, I'm okay with, not that I wanted to force the agenda and like just get through for the sake of asking the questions, but there's just honestly, like we talked about it a bit towards the end there. There's so much about experience that I don't think about nearly enough. And we had a moment to talk to her about it. And I just feel like, given all the research and insights that they have around experience and how that creates meaning and how that creates difference, and it's just interesting to have the chance to pick her brain on that kind of stuff.
Man, like I have 3 pages of notes here. I was just trying to like feverishly write down everything that she was saying, and there's a few things that stood out, and it kind of came up in the interview as well. But when we think about brands, and as marketers, like we're hyper focused on the ads, making sure like they're spot on. But the reality is, when it's only 25% accountable for the total brand experience, and 75 is coming from all the experience touch points, it shows you that, I don't know, if you were to say, let's just focus on that 75%, and the 25% we had to cut at any given time because recession, because of whatever, brands could still live. And that's kind of a scary thought to me. You know, I always thought that ads maybe played a larger role. But if it is only 25%, maybe, I don't want to say there's merit to them constantly cutting our budgets. If everything else is checked off the right way, I don't know, man, I struggle with that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, so we were talking about Disney as an example.
Yeah.
Like, I think, there's a few things when we talk about the role of marketing, and I love your line of questions always kind of comes like, where does things fit in the marketing operation or within the business, like branding?
Yeah.
I love those kind of questions because it's forcing me to think differently and bigger than just say the promotional P. If you think about pricing, product, and place as part of the marketer's scope, then there's a huge opportunity, even if there's a reduction in budget, for a marketer to create impact within an organization beyond the ads we run, because it's one of the 4 Ps. It's not the only thing we do. And then in thinking about Disney, like I literally was like in this lineup for an hour and a half, and there's this one part in I think it was Peter Pan's Peter Pan adventure, whatever the ride was. But you go through this lineup part, and there's a section where it's like a waiting room. Like, it's not just a straight line, right? There's like all these different areas that you go into, and there's different experiences within the rooms. But there's one particular room that you spend a fair bit of time in, and there's like this shadow that's being cast over this wall, and then you can see Tinkerbell flying around and stuff. But you can play with bells that are shadows. And so there's a bell that pops up, and you can, with your shadow, hit the bell and it will make a noise, or you can hold your hand out and some butterflies will fly and land on the shadow of your hand and things like that. So kids are just like mind blown. This is amazing.
Of course.
Even me, I was like, this is amazing. But
I'd be amazed.
But even that, and then I started thinking about that as an experience, and it creates a brand experience. So then I was thinking about that and how it applies to like just benign things that you can just ignore all the time. Like, what is our sales process? What is our customer service process?
Exactly.
Like, how do we take that idea of, while people are waiting, entertaining them or providing them with extra value, so that it's not just the straight process. Like you can design all kinds of experiences to brand an organization. And, you know, I think there's a role for marketers there too.
Yeah. And I think that's where my mind went. And I know, like, off camera, we had just a quick conversation, you know, with Mary around, like, well, the idea of like decentralized marketing versus a centralized marketing function and whatnot. If a marketing department in an organization is literally only responsible for campaigns, go-to-market, ads, etc., I could see how quickly that discipline could be marginalized. If, however, a marketing department has more eminence across some of those other experience touch points, call it, you know, sales, the service, the, what's another good one we could use? The product itself.
Sure.
Because remember, marketing should be that the customer voice internally, right? So it should have a way to kind of impact. Then all of a sudden, the marketer's job is a lot larger than it is just simply pumping out ads. So then if there is a decrease in budget, that doesn't mean you can't still have an impact to the organization and the brand.
Right.
But all too often, a lot of these structures are very, I don't want to use the word myopic, but just very
siloed almost. Like
the
responsibilities.
Siloed.
Yeah.
Exactly. The responsibilities are siloed, which doesn't allow for true that end-to-end maybe management or impact, that then all of a sudden a marketer may feel marginalized because, hey, you don't trust marketing because you cut my budget again. But in that moment, like, a marketer can be thinking bigger. It's like, well, I can still impact the brand differently. And I don't think we do that. And it comes back to structure, though, you know, and I don't think we're set up to do that the right way. And that goes back to our last year's conversation. Where does brand live? Oh, sorry, the podcast, like, what is it? Who owns it? I'm still a big believer that brand in of itself needs to live outside of marketing, right? It's like the brand, and it's like all the customer touch points and the ability to market the actual thing. But then that's how you kind of future-proof a team as well. Because now you're looking at multiple end-to-end touch points to help impact that. So anyways, my mind was going a mile a minute as she was going through a lot of this stuff. Another thing that I thought was really interesting is like the chart itself. And I know we're doing video now, so we can kind of use our hand gestures and everything.
Maybe we could figure out how to put this chart in as a link or something like that. But
yeah, but like the meaningful, sorry, go ahead. Go.
No, I was just gonna say maybe we can even figure out a way to do it, like show it on the video. That would be next level. That would.
If there's any video out there, video editors out there would love to help us out with all this. We don't have money.
This
just raise your hand. This is just for fun. But honestly, like, when you think about, like, their meaningful difference network, and they have the meaning, salience, and difference, and then their impact on purchasing a product today, what was it? Like 40% is attributed to it being meaningful, 40% was it being salient, and then 20% was it being different. But that same product, if you're buying in a year, the numbers change drastically, where you have the meaningful jumps from 40 to 45. The salience drops to 10%. So it's not as important in a year, but that's where your difference makes up the difference. Well, your difference makes up the difference, but it jumps to 45%. So I think, again, thinking about the longevity and the way you're marketing it and the way you're thinking about it, you know, there's probably 2 out of the 3 things where you have to be more focused on, especially in the long term versus the short term. And that's where sales and salience, you know, become very myopic because it's in that moment, right? So that's the discounting effect. And it's why it probably works.
Never done this yet.
You think this is going to work?
I don't know. It looks like it's working to me. We have officially shared a screen on the software.
This is amazing.
If this works, then I'm going to be super excited. We have so many other options now.
Oh, no kidding.
This is going to be great.
So obviously the visual does a lot better way than me describing it.
Well, I think you did great.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm with you. Like, there's just a lot of interesting elements to consider in terms of, like, creating value from an organization's perspective from the marketing department,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's a formula that I think you and I've talked about before, but the one that I like thinking about a lot is value equals benefit minus cost. So you can increase value by cutting costs, or you can increase benefit, or some combination thereof. And so,
Right.
you know, I think from an organizational perspective, you could think about marketing, improving marketing's value by decreasing their budgets, which cuts costs. But from a marketer's perspective, you could look at that and go, well, how do I increase the benefits I'm providing to the organization? And things like whether the company does it or not, it's, you know, I don't know. But Mary talked about a little bit that brand gap of what expectations are you setting into the mind of the customers, and then what are you actually delivering against? And I don't know if that is being measured often by a lot of organizations, but there are studies out there, and it oftentimes looks like a punchline.
Yeah.
80% of people we ask in an organization think they deliver great at brand experience. 5% of customers agree. You know what I mean? Like there's often this massive disconnect. And so I think there's a, you know, from a marketer's perspective, you can look at a chart like that and think about how do we close the gap? And then instantly you're thinking about different ways to create value outside of just an ad budget.
I agree. And again, this is changing the way we think about, you know, structures and the way the role of the marketer in an organization. But if we do a better job, in my opinion, at least, in showing our value across the other areas as well, to help build those experiences, then I would argue you may have an easier time making a case for budget, because now it's like it helps build the frequency, it helps build the mental availability. Like it has so many downstream effects on the experience that you're trying to build across in store. If we're using a bricks and mortar example, for instance, you know, and because now your value is outside of just like driving a campaign.
Totally.
And I think all too often we just stay in that space, and that's how we become the coloring department.
Totally. Yeah, super interesting. And the other thing, my last sort of not last, but the last I'll talk about here, was just that the importance of being consistent, not just on the brand perspective, like in terms of the distinctive assets you're building.
Yeah.
Though I think that is really important, like crucially important, but also thinking about it from an experience perspective as well. Just the consistency of having great experiences and pairing that with recognizable distinctive assets over time can be a way to create differentiation without it having any different product. Like you can sell the same shoes as I can, but we can have a completely different experience. Like Zappos is always the thing I think of when it comes to that. It completely differentiated themselves on customer service as opposed to, say, Amazon or any other retailer.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny, our shared experience in retail, you know, how did we differentiate ourselves from like the Amazons or some of the other retailers that showed, you know, sold the same shoes? It was the experience that they're trying to create in stores as well, right? The digitization of the stores, if you recall. Maybe we went too far with some of it and it wasn't actually useful, but it did create a different experience for the consumer walking in through the doors. So I think like the experiential retail, or, you know, in that case, there is a huge validity of it. And that's why like research and development, you should constantly be looking at that. And then obviously, like if we go back to Tom's conversation that we had like late last year, like don't be blinded by the trends that you're seeing. Like don't think about the metaverse right now. Like, think about other ways you can, you know, genuinely create experiences with your consumers today with the technology that exists today. Like don't, at least in my opinion, and I don't want to say like don't invest in technology. It does make sense to stay curious about it. Like for me, stay close to the metaverse. Don't overinvest there yet, because I'm sure there's other areas in the organization you can probably be focusing that attention to. But I don't want to say it's not difficult, man. Like even with Andrea, we were talking about like customer centricity. It's not hard. Just put the voice of the guest or the voice of the customer in your organization.
Totally. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it was a good conversation, V.
man.
I'm glad we did that.
This is
we'll probably have to break around again because we didn't get to the second half of.
I want to get to like the performance branding element, really genuinely, because I think that's an incredible. Not only will it be an incredible conversation, but it's another way of reframing, the idea of branding, be more performance oriented. It's
agreed.
Yeah. Anyways, Mary, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mary. And B, adieu.
Adieu, my friend. This is it's been a slice.
It's been good. We'll chat soon.
Sounds good, buddy. Have a great day.
Ciao.
Ciao.